Hey! Alright, guys. Happy Let's Talk Tuesday. We are going to jump in. We are going to jump in if I can fix this. I always have issues every Tuesday. We're going to jump in and get started. Thank you guys for joining the live. Thank you on Facebook and thank you on Instagram. This week, I have my phone charged and my iPad charged so that I don't have any mishaps today. So today, I have a whole lot, well, I won't say a whole lot of things to talk about, but as you guys know, last week we talked about creating generational mental wealth. So I definitely want to just do a quick reminder on what we talked about last week. But the first thing I'm going to do is introduce myself. My name is Samantha Edu. I am a licensed professional counselor here in the wonderful state of Georgia. I provide online teletherapy services only to those that are in the state of Georgia. But if you live somewhere else and need therapy, please, by all means, contact me. Get in my DMs. Hey, LaShawn. Hey, Candace and Tyra. Get in my DMs. Let me know. And I will do everything in my power to help you find a therapist in your area, because there is no reason or excuse for people to just be out there not getting therapy these days. And everybody needs it, including myself. Everybody can use therapy. So Therapy for Ladies is the name of my private practice. And what I wanted to create in Therapy for Ladies was a space where I could create relationships with ladies that included a healing, not just for what's going on now, but just to create that generational mental wealth, to heal things that happen throughout the generations. Like, you didn't just wake up with these things. These are things that have been passed down since your mom, her mom, aunties, cousins, grandma, sisters, aunties that we called aunties, but they wasn't really aunties. Like, the things that have been passed down, I want us to focus on that so that we started creating generational mental wealth for our future generations, for our daughters, their friends, their daughters, all of them. Because if we have healthy daughters, we have healthy families. Last week, like I said, we talked about creating generational mental wealth, and I listed 3 ways that you can start creating generational mental wealth. Now, I put up my first blog post. It's on www.therapyforladies.com, and in that blog post is a bonus worksheet. It's called a Take a Look at Yourself Reflection Worksheet, because step 2 is doing some self-reflection. So I want you to go to that blog post at www.therapyforladies.com. It's fillable, so you don't even have to print it. You can fill it out when you have some quiet time and you are journaling. Just start doing this stuff, because when you know these things, when you sit and identify some of these things, when you do self-reflections, it helps you to create a plan. You can print that thing out, take it to your therapist, and that will start a whole plan of treatment. So that's what we talked about last Tuesday. Now, I have something really fun I'm planning to do starting next Wednesday. But I won't go into it. I'm going to hold off, but it's going to be so fun. I can't wait to do it. And we're going to kick it off in the Facebook group, Ladies Raising Ladies. So if you want to be a part of it, go ahead and hop to Facebook and join the Ladies Raising Ladies Facebook group, because we're going to be doing something really fun every Wednesday. All right, now the fun stuff. Last week in the Let's Talk Tuesday, while I was planning it out and kind of writing my thoughts out, the term generational rule of silence came out of my mouth. It came out of my thoughts, came out of my mouth, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a thing, a generational rule of silence. And what that means is, like, if you grew up, when I was growing up, there were things like, man, me and my cousins, we didn't know about. We had nothing, like, it had nothing to do with us. We were told outright, this don't have nothing to do with you. Bye. Go find something else to do. Get out of my business. Like, we, it was like this silence, or what happens in the house stays in the house. Or let's just act like it didn't happen and it'll go away. So that's what I mean when I say the generational rule of silence. It's like this unspoken or spoken rule of silence that's been passed down from generations to generations to generations. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. And it's so amazing how I had this idea. Then my mom called me. She said I could talk about this, by the way. I'm not going to tell everything we talked about, but I was telling her what I was talking about today. And she was like, what you mean? Like, what do you mean tell you stuff? What is it that you want to know? And I said, well, it's not that I want to prompt you to tell me stuff. What I want to do is change the mindset of women so that they don't feel like they have to be prompted to share with the women in their family things that have gone on with them in the past. And so she was just like, why would I tell you things? You don't need to know that stuff. And I'm dumbfounded. Now I'm sitting here like, did I make this up? Like, maybe I'm overreacting about the need to have the information. Like, what do you guys think? Because I don't know. You know how sometimes people say something and it make you start rethinking your whole thought process. It's like, did I make this up? Was it really needed? So that's kind of where we were in the conversation. Like, okay, she was saying, I don't think you need to know all this stuff, and how is it gonna help you? And I was thinking, like, Ma, like, these are things that I should have known then. And like, I'm 36 right now. You could definitely tell me some stuff and I would be okay with it. Like, I'm super grown and I've done a whole lot of stuff in my own life that I wouldn't be judging you about your own stuff. So in the end, though, she did not choose to share any. She did share some information that I didn't know, but like, I could hear her thoughts out loud when she came upon something, and she was like, oh, no, you don't need to know that. You don't need to know that. And so it just made me think, like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why the Facebook group Ladies Raising Ladies is so important. This is why Therapy for Ladies is so important, because, like, there is just to hear her, and I know that my mama loves me. Like, I know she loves me to the bone, every essence of my soul. But I also know that it is so important for her to protect her past, that I don't know what it would take for her to tell me. And at this point, I'm not trying to pressure her to tell me anything, because I'm trying to create something different from generations to come. I can't change the past. So that is why we're talking about these generational rules of silence, because they're just unspoken. I don't know where she got that rule from. I'm guessing from my grandmother. I don't know how much she knows about my grandmother either. It's just amazing to me. So I have been planning to do this all week, but literally at 7:59, I was getting off the phone with my mom, and we had this whole 40-minute conversation about, like, why is this important to me, and is it really important to people, or, I just don't see the purpose. So I did ask her some questions, and she agreed to give me some answers. It's only 2 because we didn't have that much time. But the next part is why? Why are people silent? Why was this so important then? Even now, what I'm saying? Even now, because I know, although I'm open with my daughters, I know people, and I have friends of people that I know who has the same mindset as my mom's mindset, which I'm not going to say, like, I had to explain to my mom, me saying you were choosing not to tell me stuff has nothing to do with love. It doesn't have anything to do with whether you were a good parent. It has everything to do with why didn't you trust me enough to be able to hold negative information about you and love you despite of that. That's what I was kind of conflicted with. So I guess I wrote down like some different reasons for why people are silent. The first one was to avoid consequences. So, you all know I do work full time in a community mental health setting, and so I know there, we hear countless stories of situations where family members knew something was going on in a home, or all sorts of things, and it's silence, and people didn't say anything. Or like this R. Kelly thing that just came out, people around knew what was going on and people chose not to say anything because nobody wants the consequences. Even if I wasn't the perpetrator, I wasn't the one who did it, but if I say something, now I have to talk to the police, now I have to talk to DFACS, now I have to I have to be the shoulder to cry on, because everything is not about a sexual assault or something like that. Some things are just quiet. Now if I say something, then I must be the one responsible. One example that came to mind is mental illness in families. I don't know if anybody watching has experienced this, where there was somebody in your family that had mental illness and everybody was just kind of acting like it wasn't happening. Oh, that's just, Aunt Chi Chi, that's how she is. That's just her. And nobody's reaching out to get her help. They're just acting like that's just her. You know how she is. And Aunt Chi Chi might be in her room talking to all the voices, responding. And if Aunt Chi Chi just got some help, it would change all sorts of things. It would change generations. But nobody would choose to talk. So, that's the type of thing that I'm talking about, like that thought process that I'm not gonna say anything about. I keep saying Aunt Chi Chi, but that's hilarious. I'm not gonna say anything about Aunt Chi Chi in the room doing all of this, because that means I must have to take her to a psychiatrist now. Like, people don't want to say anything because they don't want the consequences and they don't want the responsibility. The next reason why people are, hey Andrew, the next reason why people are silent is because of shame and guilt. Shame and guilt. When somebody says that something's happening in the family, it can be crime. It can be something so simple as somebody's grades. Like, when this is really is funny. So every year, people are putting out their grades. LaShawn says she has an Aunt Chi Chi. People every year, during their school year, I see people posting their children's grades, right? And I'm always like, this is so awesome. Good job, BB. Good job. Good job, little Johnny. And I'm thinking to myself, I am not posting my child's report card. Like, no. No. So it's like everyone experiences these senses of like, oh, am I ashamed? And that's like really a place of vulnerability for me to say that. But there's this sense of shame and guilt. Like, I'm not gonna say anything about anything going on in their household because people gonna think I'm like that, or people gonna think I have a problem, or they gonna think this, so it's like the shame, and that's shame. But guilt, oh my gosh. And I don't want to get too I don't want to trigger anyone through this Let's Talk Tuesday, but I will say, if you get triggered after this live, please reach out to me. But the guilt, I have so many clients that have experienced sexual molestation, sexual assault, inappropriate behaviors, and somebody in the family knew, and they just didn't say anything. And so no one has a conversation. Even as an adult, The conversation isn't had because that other person is experiencing guilt. Even if this person A goes and says, hey, person B, I know it wasn't you, but I have to talk about this. I know this happened to me. And person B says, no, that didn't happen to you. But they know it did. But they feel guilty because they've known all these years. That's another reason why people stay silent. The third reason, and this is a really big one, the inability and or incapacity to manage the emotions related to that. Now, I know in African American culture, managing emotions is like, especially when and where I grew up, being emotional, especially as a woman, was not, I wouldn't say was spoken down against, but we were taught to manage our emotions, to hold that in and not walk around being all emotional. Just handle it. Handle it. And that is one of those generational things that gets passed down and passed down and passed down. Before you know it, you're handling situations. No one knows you're dying on the inside. No one knows that it hurts. No one knows you are constantly in a pain, walking around with this on your face, but you are in pain just handling it. Inability and incapacity to manage emotions. Andrew says the management of emotions is hard. It is. And sometimes it's so hard that we choose not to do it by being silent. And it doesn't serve us well. It doesn't serve the other person well. It won't serve our children well. We have to teach our children how to use their voice. How to say, hey, I don't feel good about this. Or, you mentioned something the other day and I wanted to just explore that. I wanted to ask more questions. Instead of just being like, I'm not asking her no questions so she can smack me. Like, nope, I'm not. She not going to tell me anyway. You know, we have to create an atmosphere to where when we see our children walking into their future and they turn around and look back at us, they know exactly what they're looking at. They don't see brick wall. They don't see a mask face. No, they see me in all my humanistic ways, and they love me and know I love them. I found this quote by Miguel de Unamuno, and it says, sometimes silence is the worst kind of life. Sometimes silence is the worst kind of life. Because silence, man, there's so much said in silence. There is nothing quiet about silence. So one thing that we do in therapy, it's actually like a skill, and it's called silence. And what you do is you allow there to be some quiet space in the session. So like, let's say if someone is just not talking, not participating, and all they want to do is be silent, I will sit there and sit in the silence. I will sit in the silence with them because there is so much to be said in silence. So much to be said. So once you learn how to sit in someone's silence, they're going to come out and say anything because they're thinking. They're not just over there in a blank, hey Tarian, they're not just over there in some type of blank mode. They're not just sitting in silence, but there is a loud unspoken word in silence. I want to move on to what are the effects? Like, what's the purpose? Because one thing that my mom said in our conversation was, why do you need to know this? Why do you need to know? Like, and I just could not get her to understand that there were a lot of things that I did growing up that if I had known you did them too, I would not have felt so persecuted And so, like, I had just fallen out the grace, out of grace. I would have known that this is something that has happened and I can come back from this. And it would have really halted. Now, I do believe that when you tell, because I have teenagers, just because they know you did it, it doesn't stop them from doing it, right? Like, we all know that. But what it does do is, like, it keeps you from creating this myth or sense of perfectionism that is not realistic. I don't have to walk around. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be perfect. But if you're my mom and I'm looking to you and you have this perfect persona going on, then I'm thinking to myself, then I have to be perfect too. I must have to be perfect if she's perfect. So the times when I'm not perfect, I beat myself up. But nobody knows. Nobody knows I'm beating myself up at 18, 19, 20, all the way up to who knows when. Nobody knows that that's happening because I'm walking around with this. You know what I'm saying? So it's that learned silence. But if I knew I didn't have to be perfect and that it would be okay for me to make mistakes because you made them and you got past all that, that could have changed. That could have changed just the trajectory of generations to come. The second effect of silence is that the idea, how people say if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. That's not true. That's a myth that creates a false sense of comfort. It's like creating an oil leak and you don't know where it's coming from. Like Andrew said, he used to hold in a lot of things until he would explode, and then it would just repeat itself over and over. And that's what happened when you think to yourself, oh, if I don't talk about it, it'll just go away. No, that's an oil leak that you don't know where the oil coming from, but it's leaking. And it's leaking somewhere on something in somebody. Like, it's an oil leak. And at some point, you're going to explode. Those things need to be explored and talked about. The last effect that I wrote was the unspoken conflict within families that's sometimes masked. So I say this to say, I have had like some therapy sessions where the client is sharing about this silence, or they're upset because they've been walking around with trauma from childhood for 20, 30, 40 years, however long, and the family acted like it didn't happen. And they love their family, but there's that leak, that oil leak, and it's conflict, because if you start talking about it with the family, you can see there's anger there. There's anger there, but it's covered by love, and so much love. So much so that you continue to be silent for years and years and years because you do not want someone to think you don't love them because you are asking for answers. So those are the effects of generational silence. The effects of generational silence. Creating that oil leak. What we're going to do, and what I want us to leave this live with the thought that we're going to start breaking these rules. Like, generational rules of silence was created, one, without my permission, because I never once signed something or said, you know what, that's cool, don't tell me. No, it's good. I don't need to know all these things about you. I don't need to know all these things about my auntie and my grandma. It's cool, don't tell me. I never once gave anybody in my past generations permission to keep things from me because of this unspoken rule of silence. And so, moving forward, I'm breaking those rules, and I'm asking you, start breaking those rules. Be okay with making yourself uncomfortable, making your family members uncomfortable, making whoever uncomfortable, so that you can create a situation where generations to come feel okay with using their voice. One way you can break that rule is, and you know what I'm about to say. If you know me, you know what I'm about to say. Go to therapy. Go to therapy. Find a therapist. Like I said earlier, this day and age, there is very few reasons for a person to not be in therapy. We have community service boards. Like I said, I work full-time for a community service board. Free therapy, free groups, free medication. Like, if you have insurance, you can go to therapy. There are people that do therapy on sliding fee scales. Now there are people that do face-to-face. I do online therapy. Like, you can sit in your car on your lunch break and be at therapy. It's not a lot of reasons for people to not be in therapy. That's the first way to break the rule, because once you get in therapy and you allow yourself to do some self-reflection, it encourages you and it empowers you to continue to seek ways to heal yourself enough to create generational mental wealth. The second rule that needs to be broken is having a conversation with your family. So I talked earlier about the conversation I had with my mom before I got on the live. And I was so uncomfortable in that conversation because I was like, oh, what is this about to turn into? Because we don't talk about this stuff. We do not go underneath the surface a whole lot of times. Like, unless it's just, like we have to, then we will, but not usually. It's all up here. Nobody trying to get into no deep emotions around here. So to see that that's where it was going, I know I got uncomfortable, and I could tell she was uncomfortable. But I'm willing to break those rules in order to make sure that I'm teaching my daughters come to me and say, yo, Mom, what was that about? Like, what, how did this happen? Because you said this, if this was this date and this was this date, then what was happening in between all that? And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell my child exactly what it is. As is age appropriate. Now, I'm not going to tell my 10-year-old all my business, but my 16-year-old, you probably could ask her more about me than you can ask me. And she needs to know. She needs to know these things. So that's really all I wanted to talk about today, was just breaking the rules of that generational rule of silence, throwing it out the window. Having these conversations is not just for women. It is for women and men, because there was once an era where silence is key. Silence equals survival. Silence equals survival. But I think right now we have had a turn of events where silence is a detriment, and using your voice is what's going to be key to your families and their families surviving, because they will be mentally wealthy. They will be mentally wealthy. And that is the legacy that I'm going to be leaving my children, encouraging them to be mentally wealthy. And I encourage you to do the same. Once again, my name is Samantha Edu. I am a licensed professional counselor here in the wonderful state of Georgia. You guys can reach me at www.therapyforladies.com. If you are on Facebook, I'm there on Therapy for Ladies. There's also a wonderful Ladies Raising Ladies Facebook group for ladies raising daughters, and we talk about things like this. We have funny posts. I would love for you to join it too. Thank you for joining tonight. I look forward to meeting you all again next Tuesday for our Let's Talk Tuesday. And please check out the blog post at www.therapyforladies.com, where there is a bonus worksheet. Take a look at your self-reflection worksheet that is free to you all. Thank you, and have a good evening.